Maya Torres was 19 years old when she first walked onto Naval Air Station Oceana in Virginia Beach. The salt air mixed with jet fuel hit her lungs like a promise. She had dreamed of this moment since she was 7 years old, watching blue angels streak across the sky at an air show with her late father. He had been a mechanic in the Navy, never a pilot. But he told her she could be anything now. Standing on the tarmac with her duffel bag slung over one shoulder, Maya felt the weight of that dream pressing down on her chest. She was the youngest person in her training class, and she was the only woman. The other aviators didn't hide their thoughts. She could see it in their faces when she introduced herself. The slight smirks, the exchanged glances, the way Lieutenant Commander Harris looked her up and down like she was a lost tourist who had wandered onto the base by mistake. "Torres, right?" Harris had said on her first day, squinting at his clipboard. He was a tall man with gray at his temples and a jaw that looked like it had been carved from stone. 23 years in the Navy, a decorated combat pilot, a man who had seen everything, or so he thought. "Yes, sir," Maya replied, standing straight, shoulders back. Harris nodded slowly. "You know, we've had women in aviation before. Good pilots." "Very good," he paused. "But this unit has standards. High standards. And frankly, you're awfully young. Most of these men have years more experience than you." Maya felt her pulse quicken, but she kept her voice steady. "I understand, sir. I'm ready to prove myself." Harris looked at her for a long moment. Then he sighed. "We'll see." That phrase became a soundtrack to her first 3 months on base. "We'll see." It's what Harris said when she aced her written exams. It's what Lieutenant Briggs muttered when she completed her simulator training ahead of schedule. It's what the other pilots whispered when she nailed a particularly difficult landing pattern. "We'll see." As if everything she did was just luck. As if the next test would finally expose her as a fraud. The worst was Petty Officer First Class Derek Vance. He was 28, cocky, and considered himself the best stick in the unit. He had a way of leaning against the hangar wall with his arms crossed, watching Maya with a smirk that made her skin crawl. "Hey, Torres," he called out one afternoon as she walked toward the ready room. "My little sister wants to be a pilot too. She's 12. Think you two could swap training tips?" The other guys laughed. Maya kept walking. "Come on, I'm just playing," Vance said, jogging to catch up with her. "But seriously, you know this isn't a game, right? People die up there, and when things go bad you need strength, experience, not just someone who looks good in a flight suit." Maya stopped and turned to face him. She was 5'5". He was well over 6 feet. But she didn't look away. "I know exactly what this is," she said quietly. "And I'm not going anywhere." Vance grinned. "We'll see." There it was again. Maya had grown up in a small town in New Mexico. Her mother worked 2 jobs after her father died. There was never much money. Never much of anything except hard work and the stars stretched out over the desert at night. Maya used to lie on the roof of their trailer and imagine herself up there, cutting through clouds, free and fast and unstoppable. She'd joined the Navy at 18, scored in the top 2% on her aptitude tests, flew through basic training, and when she qualified for aviation, it felt like the universe was finally aligning. But the universe, she was learning, didn't care about dreams. It cared about proof. Every day was a test. Not just in the cockpit, but in the locker room, the mess hall, the briefing sessions. She was always being watched. Always being measured. One mistake and she'd confirm every doubt they had about her. So she didn't make mistakes. She studied twice as long as anyone else. Memorized every system. Every procedure, every emergency protocol. She ran 5 miles every morning before dawn. She practiced landings in the simulator until her eyes burned. She learned to ignore the comments, the looks, the way conversations stopped when she entered a room. But ignoring it didn't mean it didn't hurt. 3 months in, the unit was assigned to support the annual Oceana Air Show. It was a big deal. Thousands of spectators, media coverage, a chance for the Navy to show off its best and brightest. Maya wasn't assigned to fly in the show. She was assigned to ground support, logistics, basically making sure the real pilots had everything they needed. "You're not ready for this kind of public demonstration," Harris had told her. "Maybe next year." Maya nodded and swallowed her disappointment. She told herself it was fine. She was still learning, still proving herself. But when she saw the flight roster, Vance was flying lead in the formation demo. It stung. The day before the air show, The unit gathered for a final briefing. Harris stood at the front of the room, clicking through slides on a projector. Weather conditions, flight paths, safety protocols, remember, Harris said, his voice firm. This is a demonstration, not a circus. Fly clean, fly smart. The crowd wants a show, but our priority is safety. Understood? Yes, sir, the room echoed. Maya sat in the back, taking notes even though she wouldn't be in the air. She wanted to know everything. Understand everything. Be ready for everything. After the briefing, as everyone filed out, Harris called her name. Torres. A word. She approached him, heart sinking. What now? Harris looked tired. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. Look, I know you're frustrated. I know you want to fly in the show. I understand the decision, sir, do you? He studied her. You're good, Torres. Better than I expected, if I'm honest. But good isn't enough when you're flying in front of 10,000 people. You need to be flawless, and you need the respect of your team. Right now, he trailed off. Right now, they don't respect me, Maya finished. Harris didn't deny it. Earn it. Keep doing what you're doing. Your time will come. Maya wanted to believe him, but she'd heard promises like that before. That night, lying in her bunk, she stared at the ceiling and thought about quitting. Not seriously, but the thought floated there, tempting and terrible. It would be easier to walk away, to find something else, to stop fighting for every inch of ground. But then she thought of her father. The way he used to smile when he talked about the jets he worked on. The way he told her over and over, you can do anything, Misha. Anything. She thought of every girl who'd been told she wasn't strong enough, smart enough, tough enough, and she decided to stay. The morning of the air show dawned bright and clear. Perfect flying weather. The base buzzed with activity. Crowds poured through the gates. Families with children, veterans with cameras, aviation enthusiasts with binoculars. Maya worked logistics, checking fuel loads, coordinating with ground crews, making sure everything ran like clockwork. It wasn't glamorous, but it mattered. At noon, the flight demonstration was set to begin. She stood on the edge of the tarmac, watching as Vance and the other pilots climbed into their FA-18 Super Hornets. The jets gleamed in the sunlight. Engines roared to life. The crowd cheered, and Maya felt the familiar ache of wanting to be up there with them. But she pushed it down. Focused on her job, the jets taxied into position. One by one, they screamed down the runway and lifted into the sky. Maya watched them climb, her heart climbing with them, and then everything changed. The formation was beautiful at first. 4 jets moving in perfect synchronization, slicing through the clear Virginia sky. The crowd roared with approval. Children pointed. Cameras flashed. Maya stood near the flight line, hands shading her eyes, watching the planes bank and roll in precise patterns. She recognized Vance's jet in the lead position. She could almost imagine his smug grin inside the cockpit. The routine called for a diamond formation, then a break, then a solo pass by each pilot before reforming. Textbook stuff. They'd practiced it dozens of times, but at 18,000 feet something went wrong. Maya saw the smoke first. A thin black trail streaming from Vance's jet as it pulled out of a roll. Her stomach dropped. We have a problem. A voice crackled over the radio clipped to her belt. It was one of the ground controllers. Lead aircraft is showing engine temperature warnings. Possible fire. The crowd hadn't noticed yet. They were still clapping, still enjoying the show. But Maya's eyes were locked on that dark ribbon of smoke growing thicker by the second. Vance's voice came over the radio, tense but controlled. Tower, this is Sabre 1. I've got a fire warning light. Engine 2 is overheating, breaking formation. His jet peeled away from the others, trailing smoke like a wounded bird. Harris's voice cut in, calm and authoritative. Sabre 1, what's your status? Fire is confirmed, Vance said. There was an edge to his voice now, fear creeping in. I can't suppress it. It's spreading. Maya's heart hammered. She knew the protocols. She'd memorized them. Engine fire uncontained. The pilot had minutes, maybe less. Sabre 1, you need to eject, Harris ordered. Head out over the ocean and punch out. Maya watched the jet turning, heading east toward the Atlantic. But it was losing altitude fast. The smoke was now a thick black plume visible to everyone. The crowd's cheering turned to confused murmurs. Negative, Tower, Vance said, and Maya could hear the strain in his voice. Hydraulics are failing. I've lost rudder control. If I eject now, this bird is going to come down in the residential area. Maya's blood went cold. She looked beyond the base perimeter. Houses, schools, shopping centers. Thousands of people. Saber 1, eject now. That's an order. Harris's voice was harder now. Sir, I can't. The trajectory. And then the radio filled with a high-pitched alarm. The master caution alert. Maya knew that sound from the simulator. Multiple systems failing. I'm punching out, Vance shouted. Maya saw the canopy blow off the jet, saw the ejection seat rocket upward, the parachute deploying a moment later. Vance was safe, but the jet wasn't. The burning FA-18, now a pilotless missile, began a slow, spiraling descent. $30 million of flaming metal and fuel heading straight toward Virginia Beach. The crowd screamed. People started running. Maya's mind raced through the math. Altitude, speed, wind. The jet would come down in less than 3 minutes. Right in the middle of a neighborhood. Harris's voice erupted over the radio. All units, we have a runaway aircraft. Civilian evacuation protocol now. Emergency services, move. But Maya knew there wasn't time. 3 minutes to evacuate entire city blocks? Impossible. Someone had to get control of that jet. Someone had to land it. Her hand was reaching for the radio before she even realized what she was doing. Tower. This is Corporal Torres. Her voice was steady even though her hands were shaking. I can bring it down. Silence on the radio. A terrible heavy silence. Then Harris's voice sharp with disbelief. Torres, get off this channel. Sir, I can do this. I know the systems. I've logged 40 hours in the simulator on the Super Hornet. I can absolutely not. You're not qualified for... With respect, sir, I'm the only pilot on the ground right now. The other jets were still in the air miles away, already being directed to land at a backup field. That plane is going to hit houses in less than 3 minutes. I can get up there and land it. You're 19 years old, Harris shouted. You've never flown combat ops. You've never even flown solo in a Super Hornet. This is insane. Maya was already running toward the standby aircraft, a 2-seat FA-18F parked on the auxiliary pad, fueled and ready for emergency backup. Her heart felt like it might explode, but her mind was crystal clear. Torres, stand down. That is a direct order. She reached the jet. The crew chief, a grizzled master sergeant named Kowalski, stared at her in shock. I need to take this bird up, Maya said. Now. Kowalski looked past her toward the tower, then back at the burning jet spiraling down in the distance. The smoke was a black scar across the perfect blue sky. You qualified? He asked. Yes, Maya lied, sort of. She was qualified to fly the simulator. That had to count for something. Kowalski hesitated for only a second. Then he made a decision that would either save lives or end his career. Get in, he said, and started pulling wheel chocks. Maya hauled herself up the ladder and dropped into the cockpit. Her hands moved on autopilot, strapping in, pulling on the helmet sitting in the seat, connecting oxygen and comm lines. Torres, Harris's voice screamed in her ear. If you take off, you will face court-martial. Do you understand me? Maya's hands moved across the controls, starting the pre-flight sequence she'd practiced hundreds of times in the simulator. Battery on. Fuel pumps. Engine start, I understand, sir, she said quietly. But I can't let those people die. The engine spooled up with a rising whine. The jet trembled with barely contained power. Maya. It was the first time Harris had used her first name. His voice was different now, scared. You don't have to do this. You don't have to prove anything. Her hands gripped the throttle and stick. Yes, sir. I do. She released the brakes and pushed the throttle forward. The Super Hornet leaped down the taxiway like a living thing. Maya had never felt acceleration like this. The simulator didn't capture the raw violence of it, the way the jet wanted to tear itself free of the earth. She pulled back on the stick and felt the nose lift. The wheels left the ground. She was flying. Terror and exhilaration flooded through her in equal measure. Every nerve in her body screamed that this was impossible, that she was going to die, that she'd made a horrible mistake. But her hands stayed steady on the controls. Tower, I'm airborne, she said. Requesting vector to the runaway aircraft, another pause. Then a different voice came over the radio. Calmer, professional. One of the senior air traffic controllers. Copy. Saber 6. Runaway is at your 2 o'clock. 8 miles, altitude 4,000 feet and descending. Current trajectory will impact residential area in approximately 90 seconds. 90 seconds. Maya banked hard right, pulling G's that made her vision narrow at the edges. She saw the smoking trail ahead, saw the jet tumbling slowly toward the earth. Her mind raced through the problem. She couldn't just fly alongside and wave at it. She needed to somehow get into that cockpit, but that was impossible. The pilot had ejected unless... Tower, the runaway is a two-seater F model, correct? Affirmative. The front seat was empty where Vance had ejected. But the back seat, the weapons officer's position, still had controls. Limited but functional. If she could somehow get into that cockpit, no, that was insane. You couldn't board a jet in midair, but you could do something else, I need you to connect me to the runaway's backup control system. Every modern fighter had redundant systems, including a remote override capability designed for emergencies exactly like this. In theory, ground controllers could take limited control of an aircraft if the pilot was incapacitated. Torres, the remote system requires ground-based equipment. We'd need 30 minutes to set up. The controller said. You don't have 30 minutes. Maya watched the burning jet fall. Altitude 2,000 feet. Houses growing larger below it. What if I could access it from another aircraft? She said. The systems can network with each other, right? For data sharing during formation flights? A long pause. Theoretically, yes. But you'd need to be within 50 meters. And you'd need to access the networking protocol, which requires... I know what it requires, Maya interrupted. She'd studied every system, remember? Every protocol, including ones that most pilots never bothered with. She pushed the throttle forward and dove toward the falling jet. Torres, what are you doing? Harris's voice was back, tight with panic. My job, sir. She pulled alongside the runaway at 1,000 feet. This close, she could see the flames licking from the engine cowling. Could see the empty cockpit where Vance had been moments before. Her hands flew across the touchscreen controls, pulling up the network interface. She sent a pairing request to the runaway jet systems, 500 feet. The houses below were individual now. She could see cars in driveways. Swing sets in yards, come on, 200 feet, the system connected. Maya had partial control. Not much. The runaway's hydraulics were failing, but she had enough to adjust the trajectory. She pulled back on her stick and the runaway's nose lifted in response. Not much, but enough. 100 feet. The jet screamed over a residential street so low that Maya could see people diving for cover. It clipped the top of a tree, 50 feet, and then Maya saw it. An open field, the local high school's football stadium. She adjusted the trajectory with microscopic precision, fighting the dying jet's controls, coaxing it toward that patch of empty grass. 20 feet. The runaway hit the ground nose first at the 50-yard line. It plowed through the turf in a shower of dirt and debris, tumbling, breaking apart, fire spreading. But away from the houses. Away from the people. Maya pulled up hard, her own jet climbing back into the sky. Below, the wreckage burned in the middle of the empty stadium. No casualties, she'd done it. Maya's hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip the stick. The adrenaline that had carried her through the last 5 minutes was draining away, leaving her hollow and cold. She sucked in deep breaths through the oxygen mask, trying to calm her racing heart. Sabre 6, return to base immediately. The tower controller's voice was professional, but Maya could hear the relief underneath. You are cleared for priority landing, runway 27. Copy, Maya managed. Her voice sounded strange in her own ears. Distant. She brought the jet around in a wide arc, hands moving through the landing sequence with mechanical precision. Gear down. Flaps. Airspeed. The training took over when her conscious mind wanted to shut down. Below, she could see emergency vehicles racing toward the football field, lights flashing. The wreckage was still burning, sending up a column of black smoke. But it was contained, controlled. Nobody had died. The thought hit her like a physical force, and suddenly her eyes were burning with tears she couldn't wipe away behind the mask. Sabre 6. You're cleared to land, the tower said. Nice work up there, nice work. As if she'd just completed a routine training exercise. As if she hadn't just stolen a jet and crashed a multi-million-dollar aircraft into a football field. As if her career wasn't completely over. The runway appeared beneath her. Maya forced herself to focus. Landing was the most dangerous part of flying. One mistake and she'd add her own wreckage to the day's disasters. She brought the Super Hornet down smoothly, feeling the wheels kiss the concrete. The drag chute deployed. The jet slowed. She taxied to the designated spot and shut down the engines. In the sudden silence, she could hear her own breathing, harsh and rapid. Ground crew swarmed the jet. Someone rolled a ladder to the cockpit. Maya's hands fumbled with the harness release. She'd strapped in so quickly on takeoff that she'd barely secured it properly. Now her fingers didn't want to work. Finally, the straps fell away. She stood on shaking legs and climbed down the ladder. Lieutenant, Commander Harris was waiting at the bottom. His face was unreadable. Stone. His jaw worked like he was chewing words he didn't want to spit. Out, Maya pulled off her helmet and stood at attention, even though every muscle in her body was trembling. Corporal Torres, Harris said slowly. Do you have any idea what you've just done? Yes, sir. Do you? His voice rose. You disobeyed a direct order. You took an aircraft without clearance. You performed an unauthorized combat maneuver with no supervision, no backup, and no authorization whatsoever. Maya kept her eyes forward. Yes, sir. You could have died. You could have crashed into the same neighborhood you were trying to save. You could have made everything 10 times worse. Yes, sir. Harris stepped closer. She could see a vein pulsing in his temple. You're going to be investigated. There will be an inquiry. The JAG office is probably already drawing up papers. At minimum, you're looking at serious disciplinary action. At worst, he didn't finish. Court-martial. Dishonorable discharge. Prison, maybe. Maya swallowed hard. I understand, sir. Harris stared at her for a long moment. Then, to her shock, his expression cracked. Just a little. Something that might have been respect flickered in his eyes. You saved a lot of lives today, Torres, he said quietly. But that doesn't change the fact that you broke every rule in the book doing it. I know, sir. He sighed, suddenly looking very old and very tired. You're grounded pending investigation. Surrender your credentials to the duty officer. You're confined to base until further notice. Yes, sir. Maya handed over her ID badge. Just like that, she wasn't a pilot anymore. She was a prisoner. As Harris walked away, she noticed the other pilots gathering at the edge of the tarmac. They'd landed at the backup field and been transported back. They stood in a tight group watching her. Vance was among them. He'd landed safely after his ejection, picked up by a search and rescue helicopter. His flight suit was dirty and he had a cut on his forehead, but he was alive. He was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. The next 72 hours were a blur. Maya was questioned by everyone. Safety investigators, Navy lawyers, senior officers from commands she'd never heard of. They asked the same questions over and over from every angle. Why did you take the jet? Did anyone order you to fly? Did you realize you were risking your life? Did you understand the consequences? She answered honestly. Simply, she'd seen people in danger and known she could help. That was all. They didn't seem to know what to do with that. The media got hold of the story within hours. By the next morning, it was national news. Teenage pilot saves neighborhood. 19-year-old Navy corporal crashes jet to prevent disaster. Girl wonder or reckless maverick? Maya wasn't allowed to speak to reporters. She sat in her quarters, confined and cut off, while the world outside debated whether she was a hero or a liability. On the third day, she was summoned to the base commander's office. Captain Andrea Holloway was a legend in naval aviation. One of the first women to fly combat missions in the Gulf War. Decorated, respected, terrifying. Maya stood at attention in front of Holloway's desk, heart in her throat. Holloway studied her in silence for a long moment. Then she gestured to a chair. Sit, Corporal. Maya sat. Holloway leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled. I've read all the reports. Watched the radar footage. Reviewed your training records, she paused. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most foolish. I haven't decided which. Maya didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. The investigation is still ongoing. Holloway continued. But preliminary findings suggest your actions, while unauthorized, prevented what could have been a catastrophic loss of civilian life. The runaway aircraft was on a direct path toward a subdivision. Estimated casualties ranged from 50 to 200 people. 50 to 200. Maya felt sick. You saved those lives, Holloway said. There's no question about that. But you also created a massive operational and legal nightmare. Do you understand the position you've put this command in? Yes, ma'am. The media is calling you a hero. Congress is getting involved. I've had 3 senators call me personally asking about you. Holloway's expression was dry. Everyone wants to know what we're going to do with a teenage girl who crashed a fighter jet into a football field. Maya kept her face neutral, but inside she was screaming. She just wanted to help. She'd never meant for any of this. Ma'am, I accept full responsibility for my actions, she said. Whatever consequences, Holloway held up a hand. I'm not finished. She pulled a folder from her desk. Before we discuss consequences, there's something you should know. We recovered the black box from Vance's aircraft. The fire was caused by a maintenance error, a fuel line that should have been replaced during the last service cycle. It wasn't, Maya blinked. A maintenance error? The crew chief who signed off on that aircraft is under investigation, Holloway said. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is what happened. After Vance ejected, she pulled out a series of radar images and spread them on the desk. You claimed you accessed the runaway aircraft's remote control system from your jet, that you were able to adjust its trajectory to avoid the residential area. Yes, ma'am. I used the formation networking protocol to... I know what you did, Corporal. What's remarkable is that it worked. Holloway's eyes were sharp. That maneuver isn't in any manual. It's not part of any training curriculum. As far as we can tell, it's never been attempted before. Maya's mouth went dry. You improvised a completely new emergency procedure under extreme pressure with 0 margin for error, Holloway said. And you executed it perfectly. She paused. Where did you learn to do that? I didn't learn it, ma'am. I just thought through the problem. Holloway studied her. You thought through the problem. Yes, ma'am. I knew the systems could network. I knew the remote protocol existed. I just connected them. For the first time, Holloway smiled. It was a small smile, but genuine. Corporal Torres, you have a gift. A very rare gift. You think in 3 dimensions under pressure. You see solutions that others miss. That's not something that can be taught. Maya didn't know what to say. That said, Holloway's smile faded. You still stole a jet and disobeyed direct orders. I can't ignore that. No, ma'am. So here's what's going to happen. Holloway closed the folder. You're going to be officially reprimanded. It will go in your permanent record. You'll also be assigned extra duty for the next 60 days, and you're going to write a full technical report on the procedure you invented, so we can add it to the emergency protocols manual. Maya's heart was pounding. That's all? Did you want a harsher punishment? No, ma'am, but you thought you'd be court-martialed, discharged. Holloway's expression softened slightly. Torres, you saved lives. Yes, you broke rules, but you broke them for the right reasons, and you had the skill to back it up. We'd be fools to throw that away. Maya felt tears threatening again. She blinked them back. Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me yet. Holloway stood. You're going to be under a microscope from now on. Every flight, every test, every decision, people are going to be watching to see if you're really as good as they say, or if you just got lucky once. Can you handle that? Maya stood as well. Yes. Ma'am. Good. You're dismissed. Maya saluted and turned to leave. Torres. She stopped. Holloway was watching her with an expression that might have been pride. Welcome to the hardest part. Now you have to live up to your own legend. The sun was setting over Naval Air Station Oceana, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that Maya had never really noticed before. Everything looked different now. Sharper. More real. She walked across the tarmac toward the hangar, feeling the weight of every eye that followed her. The reprimand had been announced that morning. The whole base knew. Officially, she'd been disciplined. Unofficially, word was spreading that she'd invented a new emergency procedure that would be adopted fleet-wide. She didn't know which story people believed. Maybe both. Maybe neither. What she did know was that nothing would ever be the same. Torres. She turned. Vance was walking toward her, still in his flight suit. He'd been cleared by medical that afternoon and returned to duty. Their paths hadn't crossed since the day of the incident. Maya braced herself for another confrontation, another smirk, another dismissive comment. But when Vance reached her, his expression was serious. I wanted to thank you, he said. Maya blinked. Sir? Don't sir me. I'm a petty officer, not an officer. He ran a hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable. Look, I've been thinking about what you did. You didn't have to go up there. You could have let that jet crash and nobody would have blamed you. Hell, you probably would have been better off. I couldn't let people die, Maya said simply. I know. That's what makes it. He trailed off, searching for words. I've been flying for 6 years. I'm good at it. Really good. But what you did up there, connecting those systems, adjusting the trajectory with partial controls, I couldn't have done that. Most pilots couldn't have done that. He met her eyes, and for the first time, there was no mockery in his gaze. Just honest respect. I'm sorry, he said, for the way I treated you. The comments. The jokes. I thought you were just some kid who got lucky on the entrance exams. I was wrong. Maya didn't know what to say. She'd imagined this moment 100 times. Vance finally admitting she belonged. But now that it was happening, it felt surreal. Thank you, she managed. Vance nodded. For what it's worth, you're the real deal, Torres. Don't let anyone tell you different. He held out his hand. She shook it. As he walked away, Maya felt something shift inside her chest. Not everything. Not completely. But enough. The next morning, she reported for her extra duty assignment. She expected to be cleaning bathrooms or peeling potatoes or some other degrading task meant to punish her. Instead, she was assigned to work with the base's senior flight instructor. Commander Sarah Chen. Chen was a legend, a test pilot with more hours in experimental aircraft than most pilots had total flight time. She was also notoriously difficult to impress. So you're the one who crashed the $30 million jet, Chen said when Maya reported to her office. Yes, ma'am. Chen looked her up and down. Could you do it again? Ma'am. The maneuver, accessing the remote systems from another aircraft. Could you do it again under controlled conditions? Maya thought about it. Yes, ma'am. I think so. Don't think. No. Yes, ma'am. I could do it again, Chen smiled. Good. Because we're going to test it properly. And if it works the way the reports say it does, we're going to teach it to every pilot in the Navy. She gestured to a chair. Sit. You're going to walk me through exactly what you did, step by step. And then we're going to make it official. Over the next 3 weeks, Maya worked with Chen and a team of engineers to document and refine the procedure. They ran it in simulators first, then in controlled flight tests. Every time it worked. The Torres Protocol, they started calling it. Maya hated the name. It felt too much like claiming credit, like showing off. But Chen insisted. You earned this, she said. Own it. Word spread beyond the base. Aviation Weekly did a feature story. Military Times, even civilian outlets picked it up. Teen pilots' innovation could save lives. Maya did her first official interview on a Monday morning. The public affairs officer coached her beforehand. Stay humble, stick to the facts, don't get political. The reporter was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. So, Corporal Torres, what were you thinking when you took off after that jet? Maya considered the question carefully. I wasn't thinking about being brave or making history. I was just thinking about the people on the ground. Someone had to do something and I was in a position to help. So I did. Were you scared? Terrified, Maya admitted. But fear doesn't mean you don't act. It just means you have to act anyway. The interview aired that evening. Maya watched it in the common room with a dozen other service members. When it ended, there was a moment of silence. Then someone started clapping. It spread through the room. Not mockery, not sarcasm, real applause. Maya felt her face burning, but she also felt something else. Pride. Belonging. 2 months after the incident, Captain Holloway called her in again. Torres, you've completed your extra duty. The reprimand will remain on your record, but your performance since has been exemplary. She paused. I'm recommending you for advanced flight training, specifically the Strike Fighter Tactics Instructor Program. Top Gun. Maya's heart stopped. Top Gun was the pinnacle. The best of the best, ma'am. I'm only 19. I haven't even... You're only 19 and you've already done something most pilots will never do in their entire careers, Holloway interrupted. You saved lives and advanced our capabilities. That matters more than age. But the other candidates will be older, more experienced. So what? Holloway leaned forward. Torres, you have a choice. You can spend your career trying to prove you're just as good as everyone else. Or you can accept that you have a unique gift and use it to become better than everyone else. Which is it gonna be? Maya thought about her father, about the dreams she'd had lying on that trailer roof under the New Mexico stars, about every person who had doubted her and every person who had believed. "I want to be better, ma'am." Holloway smiled. "Then make it happen." 3 months later, Maya stood on the tarmac at Naval Air Station Fallon in Nevada, preparing for her first day of Top Gun training. She was the youngest person ever accepted into the program, and still the only woman in her class. Some things never changed. But she'd changed. She stood taller now, steadier. She knew who she was and what she could do. The lead instructor, a grizzled veteran named Commander Price, gathered the class for the initial briefing. "Look around," he said. "These are the best pilots in the Navy. Every one of you is here because you've proven yourself exceptional. But exceptional isn't enough, not here. Here, we're going to break you down and build you back up better, stronger, faster." He walked down the line, making eye contact with each pilot. When he reached Maya, he stopped. "Corporal Torres, I read your file. Impressive stuff. But that was one flight, one emergency. This program is going to push you every single day for the next 13 weeks. Think you can handle it?" Maya looked him in the eye. "Yes, sir. I know I can." Price studied her for a moment. Then he nodded. "We'll see." And this time when Maya heard those words, "we'll see," she didn't feel doubt or frustration. She felt ready, because she'd already proven herself when it mattered most. She'd faced the fire and come through it. Everything after that was just details. That night she called her mother from the barracks payphone. "Mija, I saw you on the news again," her mother said, voice thick with emotion. "Your father would be so proud." Maya closed her eyes, feeling the familiar ache of loss mixed with something new, something like peace. "I know, Mama, I'm trying to make him proud." "You already have, baby. You already have." After she hung up, Maya walked outside and looked up at the sky. The stars were different here than they'd been in New Mexico. But they were just as beautiful. Just as infinite. She thought about the burning jet. The impossible choice. The moment when she decided that some things were worth the risk. She thought about all the people who still doubted her, and all the ones who had started to believe. But most of all, she thought about herself. About the girl who had dreamed of flying and the woman she was becoming. She wasn't perfect. She'd never be perfect. But she was good enough, strong enough, brave enough, and that was everything. 3 years later, Lieutenant Maya Torres became the youngest person ever to graduate from Top Gun at the top of her class. She went on to fly combat missions in 3 different theaters. She trained a generation of pilots in the procedure that bore her name. And she never forgot the day when a 19-year-old with something to prove decided that rules mattered less than lives. The day she landed the burning jet. The day no one believed until she showed them what belief really meant. Her story became legend in the Navy. They told it to new recruits, to doubters, to anyone who needed to know that impossible was just another word for not yet. And whenever someone asked her how she'd found the courage to do what she did, Maya always gave the same answer. "I didn't find courage. I just found a reason to be brave. And once you have that, everything else is just flying." Years later, she would stand before a room full of young women at the Naval Academy and tell them her story. She would see their eyes light up with recognition and hope. She would watch them realize that they too could reach for impossible things. And she would remember that girl on the tarmac, terrified and determined, climbing into a cockpit she hadn't earned yet, the girl who saved the day simply because no one else would, the girl who proved that belief isn't given, it's earned, one impossible choice at a time.